Hey, I'm Michelle, your communications director. I'm spending the next couple of Sundays at both our downtown and Lexington churches to ask people about wisdom. Let's hear what they have to say. What is some of the best advice you received?
Some of the best advice that I received would probably be, don't try to plan too much. God's plan is going to happen. Either way, it's going to be what's best for you. So try to make little plans here and there, but let his plan guide your life.
The best piece of advice I've ever received. Honestly, pray every day. That piece of advice has changed my life.
What is the best advice you've ever been given, and be specific, and who gave you that advice?
That's a tough one. The best advice I've ever been given is probably do it now, so then you can relax later.
And who gave you that advice?
You.
I think the best piece of advice I've been given is that the best possible way for God to help me is for me to stop trying to fix everything myself.
What is some of the worst advice you've ever received? What was it?
The worst advice I ever received, I don't know if it's going to be able to be put on camera.
The worst piece of advice I've received is to not feel things, to not cry.
The worst of advice I think I have heard on a regular basis is just follow your heart.
Probably to follow my heart or do what, I feel like would make me happy.
Good morning. Good morning. How are we doing? Good. Good. We are not going to follow our hearts this morning. We're going to take that advice pretty literally. We're not going to do that. As Bailey already said, and hopefully as someone told you coming in, happy Mother's Day. Genuinely, we are really thankful for you guys. My mom is watching on the live stream going down the road, so I'm really thankful for my mom. I'm thankful for Morgan, the mother of our kids, and thankful for the empowering strength and the securing comfort that you guys give. And not enough can be said, but at the very least for now, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So I'm really excited about what we get to walk through this morning. We're continuing our wisdom series. We'll be in the book of Proverbs. If you want to go there, we'll be shifting around a bunch like we have been. But what we're talking about this morning, it's a gift from God. It's one of the sweetest grace gifts he's given. The Bible speaks of it both explicitly about its goodness. He warns about its pitfalls, and it even paints beautiful pictures of it throughout its pages. It's friendship. Friendship is what we're going after today. So Proverbs 27:9, oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. Proverbs 13:20, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. 26, many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find? 22:11, he who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. And then one that is very familiar to all of us, 27:17, iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. So these proverbs point us to something that echoes and resounds throughout the whole scriptures, and it's friendship. It's that a life well lived is a life lived with others. A life well lived is a life lived with others. And even as Genesis 2, right there at the very beginning of the Bible states, we were not made to be alone. We were not meant to be alone. You were wired at your soul level for connection and for friendship. All of my favorite memories from growing up involve friendship in one way or another. There are inside jokes that I find funny that you will never find funny. I will contend to this day that Home Alone 2 Lost in New York is the best Christmas movie ever made, and it's actually not even close because of the friendships that I have and the friendship connections that I've made to that movie. There are people in your life, or there have been people in your life who can look at you and know without saying a word how you're doing and know how to help. The friend that calls you just because. There are friends from my college small group that I actually texted this past week, and just to be connected. We went on a road trip 15 years ago, but we're still connected by that brotherhood in the Lord. I was at a wedding a few weeks ago, and I looked up at the table, and there were 3 other guys that were all in my first ever life group at Midtown. And in the immortal words of Paul Rudd, I said, "Look at us. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?" There are friends in this room that have given me some of the sweetest and most impactful encouragement in my life, even if they never remember saying it. There are people in your life group or in your family that have celebrated with you, mourned with you, fought sin alongside you, friends that have encouraged you with the good news of the gospel, friends who have just been with you when you need presence more than words. As C.S. Lewis put it, friendship is the greatest of worldly goods, and I believe that is true. You were made for it. Friendship, a life well lived, is a life lived with others. And here's the deal. We often hear those things, and whether it's a change or a season of life, we think, man, I want friends like that, or I need friends like that, or I wish my friendships were different. You have maybe heard stats like this before, and particularly in America today, we're living in what has been dubbed the loneliness epidemic. The loneliness epidemic, where 60% of adults report feeling lonely on a regular basis. 15% of men and 10% of women report having no close friends, and 1/3 of both report only having 2 close friends or less. And maybe you feel a tension of, like, it feels like it used to be so easy, this whole making and keeping friends thing, and then I got a 40-hour-a-week job, and then I had kids, and then we all got smartphones, and then. I really appreciate the way a pastor named Josh Hayes puts this. He said, friendship almost always takes a back seat to more important matters. Most of us are too busy with our family and careers and hobbies and dogs to invest in meaningful friendships. Somewhere along the way, we learn to power through without them. Now, if you're a child, friendship is a life or death situation. But if you're an adult, friendship feels like a luxury item. Yes, it would be nice to have a few good friends, but you probably shouldn't think about it too much. Be thankful for what you have. You ever feel this way? That friendship is a luxury item? I do, all the time. Friends would be nice, but life. But notice how he closes. He says this, that is the practical wisdom of a busy and lonely world, but it is not the wisdom of the Bible. It's not the wisdom of the Bible. So I have great news this morning. The scriptures are here to help us and guide us and give us some wisdom. So I've got some wisdom training tools to put in our tool belts today. But before we get into the real meat of the Proverbs and God's wisdom and friendship, I just want to pause and kind of make an observation. So we're going to get off the interstate on this exit ramp, and then I'll let you know when we're getting back on the interstate. So briefly, I think this is fairly simple and obvious, but I'd like to give us some language around some categories of friendship and also offer some encouragement. One of our pastors heard this analogy for different types of friendship, and it's that of a tree. Anyone ever heard this before? Of a tree. So there are leaves. They provide beauty. They're part of the tree. They're friends, but they're just there for a season, just for a certain time of life. Then there are branches, certainly more long-lasting than leaves, but sometimes branches fall off or break. Not all branches last forever. And then there are the roots that are strong and long-lasting. The tree still needs tending, but the roots are deep and secure. Now, when I even tried to find the source of this metaphor, it actually was weaponizing one kind of friendship to another. And I want to be careful that we don't do that today. Like, I thought you were a root, or you were just a leaf. And you leafed. No, I want us to find the freedom to love people well without the idea that friendship is about having one best friend or a certain number of root friends, and then everyone else is just a social crew that can come and go, and it's not to value. We can find the friendship to choose and pursue those root friendships, to prioritize, to fight for that friendship, to walk honestly in friendship together. We can find the freedom to love friends that may be branches right now and not let guilt or bitterness for not talking frequently enough push us away from each other. We can find freedom to let a friendship be a leaf, not to cling tightly to people who were close at one point and aren't as close anymore. We can forgive both ourselves and other people for not actually being the biffle that we once said or thought they would be. This means you don't always have to prioritize your college besties or your friends from your old life group over the people that God has put in your life right now. It also means that we can love people around us without worrying whether we will be close forever. And at the same time, we can still recognize the sweetness of Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Because when adversity comes, when a storm comes, you can't expect a tree to hold on to all of its leaves. If a hurricane hits, a branch or two are going to break. It's unreasonable to expect every branch not to. But the roots many times can hold fast. And those roots are born for adversity through any time and season. So hopefully after some insight in those categories, we're going to get back on the interstate, all right? So whether it's our cultural time and place, whether it's your season of life or change or move or whatever, you can find yourself in a place saying, man, I wish friendships like I had. I miss the way that relationship used to be, or simply, man, I want friends like that. One of our pastors has a similar ongoing conversation with a lot of his kids. You know, kids will come home from school and a friend being mean to them is like threat level midnight. This is the biggest thing that we're dealing with today. And if they're ever complaining about how someone treated them or what happened, here's what he says. He says, I cannot guarantee that other people will be good friends to you. That's not something that I can control. I wish that I could make that happen for you, but I can't. But I can guarantee that if you make your focus on being a good friend, if you make your focus being a good friend to others, you create the most likely scenario for you to have good friends for your whole life. We've been told or maybe surmised that the idea about friendship is about finding good friends. You got to find your people, as Drew Holcomb might say. But what the Proverbs are going to show us today is that being a good friend is actually what we need to have fruitful friendships in our lives. It's that being a good friend is actually what it takes. Not finding a good friend, but being a good friend. Proverbs 16:7. When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. In Proverbs 21:21, whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. So, as tempting as it might be to read God's wisdom this morning or even think about friendship and think about the other people around you, what we're actually going to do this morning is to look inward, to turn inward and apply it to ourselves. That's actually the wise thing to do. So very simply, let's look at how to be a good friend from the wisdom of the Proverbs. How to be a good friend. The scriptures, much like one of our pastors to his kids, want to be able to shift our focus from outward to in. So here we go. Number one is love. Number one is love. 3 different Proverbs here. 26, many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find? 22:11, he who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. And 16:9, it is better to be of lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. A faithful friend. Starting inwardly with you becoming a faithful friend with purity of heart, gracious speech, lowering yourself, considering others around you more highly than yourself. I'd like to call the opposite of this kind of friend this morning an I'm here person. An I'm here person. When I walk into my house, my work, my life group, the ball field, I think, I'm here. Who's going to make my life better? Who's going to make my life fill in the blank, more comfortable, easier, happier, more successful. I'm here. Who is going to help me make my life better? But this posture kills friendship because I'm not loving you. I'm using you. And you're doing the same thing to me. I'm using you so that I can feel good about me, so that I can meet my needs. But a flourishing friendship is built on love. It's built on you approaching those around you in a steadfast love and faithfulness and graciousness. And friendship always requires love. Now, I don't think you will, but don't mishear me. When I say friendships require love, I very much don't mean the generic, romanticized, or idealized feelings of love. That's a love that doesn't got anything to do with it. It took a second. It's a thinker. I mean love the way the Bible means love. Like when Jesus says in John 15:13, greater love has no one than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. Or like Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13:5, love does not insist on its own way. Love is I'm laying down my life for your sake, your good over mine, your flourishing over mine, your preferences, your wants, your needs, your interests over mine. Biblical wisdom invites us to move from an I'm here person to a you're here person. From an I'm here person to a you're here person. We've said it previously in this series a handful of times, but according to the Bible, the central ingredient to becoming a person of wisdom is decentering yourself, removing yourself from the center of the world, knowing that the world doesn't revolve around you. Stop trying to make life, God, and everything else about you. And I get it. It's hard. You are the only one that thinks your thoughts. You're the only one that sees life through your eyes. So of course it's hard not to perceive yourself as the center. Of course. But how life-giving is a person in your life that looks you in the eyes when you walk into the room and says, you're here. I'm so glad that you are here. I think about my dad and learning more and more how good of a friend he is to me. For the past 30 plus years of my life, he's called me his best buddy, which is just sweet. It's just sweet. I've thought about so many different stories that I could share to kind of paint the idea of being a you're here kind of person. But really what sticks out are the things that he says over and over again of like, man, anytime I can get with my man, I'll take it. Or I'm so proud of you. Any way that I can help, I see this in you. How you work, how you lead, how you parent. And he really makes me want to be a better dad and a better friend to those around me. He's actually serving in Midtown this morning, but I think about Casey Lee. And I've told him this before, but I find so much rest in life being his friend. Man, when you talk to Casey, I feel like I'm the only person in the world with the way that he just looks at me and engages with me. I know that he cares because months later, he'll bring up something that we talked about before and that he's been praying for something. And I'm really thankful for friends like him. We got to move from an I'm here person to a you're here person. And if we want to walk in wisdom, if we want to walk in the life that God offers us, free from the constant need to center ourselves, we can follow in the way of our Savior, Jesus. We referenced this before in this series, but Philippians 2, starting in verse 4, let each of you not look only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus. So pause real quick. Which is yours in Christ Jesus? So because the Spirit of God dwelling inside of you, you have the God-given power to decenter yourself for the good of those around you. We can look to Jesus, follow in his way, learn from him. Verse 6, it goes on. Jesus, who though he was in the very form of God, did not count equality with him a thing to be grasped. Other translations would say a thing to be taken advantage of. But he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, It's that kind of sacrificial love. Your good over mine, laying down my life to serve you, those things that cultivate friendship. It's not, man, I can't wait to have great friends that would sacrifice for me. It's, how can I sacrifice for others? Lay down my life for them, and in doing so, begin to build and cultivate those relationships. And when you're a you're here person and not an I'm here person, it actually kind of naturally allows you to bring your eyes up from yourself and say, who's here? Who's here? I'm actually convinced that our kids' activities are one of our best mission fields that we have right now. But even at work, wherever you're at, that life group, you can look up and say, who's here? Who can I love intentionally? When you're not worried as much about who you are or trying to figure out who can meet your needs or who is a good friend to you, you can actually be freed up to look around, bring your eyes up and say, who is here? Yeah, we can move towards them and love them. We can move towards them and love them. And that actually leads right into number 2. Number 2 is initiative. Number 2 is initiative. Proverbs 10:4, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. And 13:4, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Diligence, being having initiative. And now you might say, now I notice here, Pastor, that these verses don't mention friendship. So what does initiative mean for any of that? And I would say probably a little bit more than you think. And most notably, any meaningful friendship is going to take initiative because any meaningful friendship is going to take time. Friendship is just going to take time. Now, not all friendships need to be the deepest friendships you've ever had. We talked about that already. But no matter what, in any case, all friendships take time. Now, I'd love to show you this graph. And maybe you feel closely to this graph. Maybe you don't. This was a survey taken in 2019. And it shows us some time spent with friends. Now, it feels obvious when we maybe think about it. You can look at the steep decline in time spent with friends right around 21, 22 years old when most folks are finishing up college. Isn't that wild? I didn't expect it to look like that. And I know most of us find ourselves on the other side of that peak. And I don't want to show you this morning to say, well, all right, too bad, can't do it, don't have the time. But I do want to kind of give us some instruction here. You may feel like this is the hardest season in your life to build and cultivate friendships. And this data can certainly back that up. And for many of us, college friends were easy just because we had the time. It was a surplus of time, but now time is tough. And so we have to heed the wisdom of Proverbs and see friendship as I'm designed for by God. It's going to take initiative. It's going to take effort. It's going to take work. You're going to have to take steps and keep taking them. I've got to take the initiative and be okay being the one that's trying to make this happen. The default of my life won't naturally move towards other people, and the default of theirs won't naturally move towards me. So it's going to take someone taking the first steps and taking initiative. Let's put it like this. You got to be willing to be someone who's always inviting. You got to be willing to be the one who's always inviting. You can invite and have friends, or you can not invite and not have friends. It's kind of that simple sometimes. And I'm also not talking about having like an extroverted personality type. That it's more about a disciplined conviction to initiate and seek people out towards friendship. Practically, it might be getting together as a married couple and saying, hey, you run our calendar, and I would like to take initiative to make this person a friend. I see this person around me. I feel like I have time with them, but I want to take initiative. It's a disciplined conviction to initiate, seek out people towards friendship, because that's what Jesus did with us. And sure, if you're the one who's always inviting, you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of not todays, can't do it. You'll get rejected, for sure. For sure. But y'all, the good news is in Christ, we have the stability of identity to be the ones that are always the inviters, even into everyday, ordinary stuff. And I feel like it could sound small, but I really want you guys to tune in and listen to me right here. If you're the one who's always inviting people to do things, you can be told no because Jesus already told you yes. You know what I mean? You can be okay with someone choosing not to spend time with you today because Jesus has already chosen you forever. You can extend love without the assurance that it gets returned because love has been extended to you fully. Most people don't have that kind of confidence. Most people don't have that kind of security. So you can serve and love those around you by being the initiator, by being the inviter, because you have that anchor, you have that stability in Jesus. Not everybody has that. I think a probable application spot could be in life group. I don't know if you've ever had the feeling of, man, I wish my life group was better at X, Y, and Z. I wish my life group was better at reaching out. I wish my life group was better at checking in and how I can pray. I was talking to a friend, and a guy in his life group randomly started texting people asking for prayer requests. And he talked to him later. He was like, hey, I've noticed you starting to do this. And he was like, yeah, I was actually really sad that no one wanted to pray for me. And then I thought, wait, when's the last time that I asked somebody how I could pray for them? Figured that's something that I can control. Might as well start with me. And I'd love to empower you and invite you into something this morning. God has placed you in your life group, in your home, in your friend group for a reason. He's put you there to be the change, to initiate the change that you want to see. And these changes, friendships included, they take time. So take the steps, keep taking the steps, and become the one who's always inviting. Yeah, become the one who's always inviting. Thinking back to the Proverbs that we said in this section, they mention words like sluggard and dullard or slack. And whether it's your season of life or whatever, I don't think we necessarily resonate with those words in modern 21st century America. Whether you're married to the grind or like we find this as a badge of honor to be generally working and hustling. Maybe your most frequent response to, hey, how's life going is, oh, it's busy. Oh, it's good, but we're busy. Good, but it's crazy. Anyone? It's just me? I feel that. I feel that. Well, again, it doesn't get you off the hook for taking initiative and walking in this wisdom. It's just what friendship takes. But I do have a little bit of encouragement and a challenge here with number 3. So connected to initiative, number 3 is priority. To be a good friend, to have good friends, you have to prioritize your friendships. Proverbs 19:2 says, desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way. And then Proverbs 21:5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Haste. So haste, I've underlined up here, is the Hebrew word oots. Can we say oots? Oots, there it is. Other translations, so sorry. I didn't actually have that written down. That's on me. It's on me. It's on me. So the Hebrew word oots, that it translates haste here. Other translations would translate to hurry. Other translations would say hurry. So one of the reasons that friendships is so difficult in our culture today is that we've bought into the lie of a frantic pace and hurry. That what we're actually supposed to be doing is to be pedal to the metal at all times and have this frantic pace and hurry to our lives. John Ortberg is one of my favorite authors and speakers and pastors, and he wrote this. He said, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. Today, we have largely traded wisdom for information. We have exchanged depth for breadth. We want to microwave maturity. The most serious sign of hurry sickness is a diminished capacity to love. Why? Because love and hurry are fundamentally incompatible. Love always takes time, and time is the one thing hurried people don't have. We are all so hurried. We are all so hurried, and we look up, and who is all of this for? Who do I have to share it with? And he kind of closes this section and says, in order to have a life of love of God and love of others around us, we must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from our lives. We must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from our lives. And your life is not going to unhurry by itself. You're not going to naturally drift in our day and age towards being unhurried. And, you know, in the first thought of, man, how can I unhurry my life is probably, well, I can get rid of a kid, but that doesn't seem to be the best option. I get it. I really do. I would say hurry and busy are different. Hurry and busy are different. Adults are going to be busy. No chance of that not being true. If you have kids, you're going to have a full calendar, facts. But that doesn't mean you have to be hurried. Hurry is different. It's a state of being, regardless of your calendar and to-do list. You can be busy and prioritize friendships, but you can't be hurried. Busyness can be the reality of the season of life that you're in, but you can still pursue an unhurried heart. Jesus was often busy. He's teaching, he's going from town to town. He's healing, going. Jesus was often busy, but he was never hurried. He was never hurried. He saw the people that were in front of him, and he was able to stop and take time. To be unhurried is to see the people around you, your coworkers, your neighbors, your kids, your spouse, not as tools to accomplish your tasks or annoyances to your scroll or pit stops to fill your emotional tanks, but to be unhurried is to slow down, to look up and to see them as the wonderful image of God bearing eternal soul that they are. See them as people. And now Brandon has already given us a good sermon about pride, but hurry is a pride issue. So not to belabor the point, but to hurry is to say, my time is more precious than yours. My thoughts, my opinions, my scrolling, my entertainment, my comfort is more important than you. And as Proverbs 18:2 says, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. The person in front of you, the person beside you is infinitely more interesting than the screen in your pocket. And the problem is that person is going to require effort and time. You don't get push notifications from people, but they are infinitely more interesting and worthy. They are infinitely more worthy of your time and your attention. You got to learn to take the time. And just because of the time and place that we're in, I wonder if for a lot of us something related to our phones is the way that we apply this wisdom here. Our phones do as much or more than anything to hurry our heart. So maybe at family dinner, your phone goes in a box. Maybe when you have lunch with a friend, your phone's on Do Not Disturb. Potentially, your life group time needs to be a no phone zone so that you know the people across from you are people. They're infinitely more worthy, more interesting than this thing in our pockets. So that's the three for this morning: love, initiative, and priority. There's much more we could say from the scriptures, but I'd love to leave us with two encouragements this morning. So number one, the first encouragement is to let go of the friendship unicorn. Let go of the friendship unicorn. We got to learn to be okay with things not being perfect in all of our friendships. There's almost nothing that is spectacular about making a friend. It almost feels too human to be spiritual, too human to be special, but it's a wonderful thing to have a friend and be a friend, but it feels ordinary. And something that we say all the time, we've said it for years, but ordinary is not insignificant. The people that God has put around you are the people that God has put around you on purpose. They're most likely pretty weird, a bit socially awkward, a touch forgetful, a bit overbearing, or they're more absent than you wish. They don't invite you to as much as you want, tell bad stories, whatever the case may be. They're potentially still struggling with this pesky thing called sin, you know? And yet here we are. Here we are in this room together. This is God's gift to us. Messy relationships with messy people, as messy people ourselves. So I just encourage you to embrace the mundanity of it all. These people in this place at this time, it's your life. So let go of the friendship wish stream, sitting around the backyard fire, Edison bulbs, and the perfect 70-degree evening, and embrace the awkward dinners, the messy conversations, the yelling conversations over screaming babies. Lean in. This is the stuff. It really is. Those people around you are better than your dream people because those dream people don't exist. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said this about friendship and community. He said, the person who loves their dream of community will destroy it. Will destroy it. But the person who loves those around them will create community, will create it, will create those friendships. And second and lastly, we got to learn to see Jesus as the greatest friend. We've got to learn to see Jesus as the greatest friend. Jesus was woven into each of our points this morning of love, initiative, and priority, and he's the perfect example of each. Wisdom calls out to us to learn from and be loved by the greatest friend of your soul, the one who knows you fully, pursues you relentlessly, and loves you deeply. Because our greatest hope in all of this, the friends we can seek to be, Christ first was towards us. He was first that friend to us who are called to love with sacrifice at great cost to ourselves for the blessing and flourishing of others. Do we not follow a Savior who first sacrificed on our behalf, who first laid down his life for his friends? Us who are called to take the initiative to move towards others, does Christ not first move towards us to welcome us, to call us, to love us when we wanted nothing to do with him? Us who are called to prioritize others, does Christ not in humility lower himself to take our place? John 15:12 says, this is my commandment. Jesus says, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. We have to start with Jesus. When we have the security that Jesus offers us, when we know that he is the truest friend who will never leave us, who will never forsake us, we have the freedom to reach out. We have the freedom to love others. We have the freedom to always be the inviter. We have the freedom to slow and unhurry, to take next steps because of Jesus. What a friend. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful who will all of our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness, so we can take it to the Lord in prayer. That's what we're going to sing. That's what we're going to remember. Jesus is the truest friend that we need. And he gives us the example. He gives us the freedom. He gives us the power to reach out and do the same.